This is Active Recall. This episode is about the book The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. Twyla Tharp is a very accomplished choreographer and dancer. She has more success than I could probably dream of. So, when you're talking about like top performers in the field, she is one of the great dancers and choreographers of this past century. And this book is about creativity, and it's not specifically about, it's through the filter of dance, but she does explain how you can apply all of these different techniques to whatever art you're pursuing. I thought it was really great, just thinking through creativity and what it means to be creative and how you can harness that even if you think you're not that creative. So I'll go through these things. The first concept is the box. This is something she talks about. In her case for dance, it's a literal box. So when she starts planning a new dance, she'll take a physical box and start putting everything in there, notes and physical tapes of her recordings, just recording free dancing so that she can go back through it. And she says that in any creative pursuit, you can also have this concept of the box. So if you're writing, you can keep a notebook. It doesn't have to be a physical thing. It can be digital, so taking your notes and things like that. And what it made me think of is Save the Cat. So that's a book about writing films. In there, there's the concept of the board, where you are storyboarding, essentially. Not quite storyboarding, it's like index cards. If you use Scrivener, there's like a digital version of that, but you are outlining with index cards. And this reminds me of the box also. It's a place where you can go to plan high-level things and stick your research and things there. She warns against staying there too long because it can feel like you're creating when you are adding things to your box, but it's not a replacement for actually doing the creative part. It is good to plan, but there's like the temptation to overplan, things like that. So watch out for that. Another thing she talks about is kind of like what you'll do 5 years from now or where you'll be 5 years from now. She talks about the importance of reading and the people that you surround yourself with. So it goes to that concept of like you are the average of the 5 people you're around. And she says, I read for growth, firmly believing that what you are today and what you will be in 5 years depends on 2 things, the people you meet and the books you read. So as far as people go, yeah, like I said, like you're the average of the people you're around. It reminded me of this concept of plus, minus, and equal. I think it might be from like Frank Shamrock or some MMA fighter, but I'm sure there's similar things throughout like martial arts or whatever, kind of like, just like different fighting techniques. Anyway, it can be applied to anything that you're learning. It's important to reach out to people. If you want to like short circuit your success, find a mentor. They can help you. So that's the idea of plus. So find someone that's better than you, find a mentor. They can help you skip some of the pitfalls that you'll run into and just save a lot of time from the start. And then minus is an idea of being ahead of someone. You're always ahead of someone. If you can think back to something that you're learning, you might not think you'll be able to teach someone, but think of what you would teach yourself 6 months ago and realize that there's someone there at that point that you can help. And that helps solidify your knowledge, and you'll get an understanding of what you really, really know and where the gaps in your knowledge are. And then plus, minus, equal. So equal is the peer, and this is someone that you can go through the struggle with. It's important to have that kind of person around. Of course, in a lot of cases, like the internet helps, but sometimes you don't have access to these people, maybe early on. Maybe you're still building these connections and joining different communities. This is where it can be important to have books. In Tim Ferriss's recent book, Tribe of Mentors, and he's talked about this on the podcast, his mentors when he was getting started in his career were dead people in a way. Like he talks about like Benjamin Franklin, and you just read about what these people did and you can find a lot and learn a lot in books. So read more. That's what I've been trying to do, and I make these videos mostly so that I can share the good parts, but also in that like plus minus equal thing, just to solidify my own knowledge and see where the gaps are, and hopefully this in some way helps me retain information. The next thing, the next area, she talks about going to the Met if she's struggling. So here's what she says: if I'm struggling for an idea, I often find myself leaving my studio, walking across Central Park, and ending up at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Museums are my favorite field trips, and working in museum-rich Manhattan, I would be a fool to ignore the local resources. I am kind of a fool. I do live in New York and I don't go to the museums enough, and I kind of know this, and I'm going to try to next year go to the museum more frequently. Every time I go to the museum, I think, oh, I should do this every day or something like that, or every week. But I should definitely try to get out there like once a month, get re-inspired. It's hard to go to that museum in particular. Like, I love the Met. That's probably my favorite museum in New York. But you don't have to live in New York and have that museum. Like, you'll have probably some local museums you can go. And I think a more important concept here is if you're stuck, one important thing you can do is change your environment. So maybe try to, if you usually write at home, go write at a cafe. If you usually write at a cafe, go write at a library or something like that. And get inspired, be around different people. And another thing is just changing your physiology. So part of going to the Met, something good there is that you are walking around. So if you get stuck, it can be good to just go take a walk, leave your phone behind, and think through whatever you're working on, whatever you're stuck with, and give it that time. It's good. Change your physiology. I think I took that from Tribe of Mentors also. Someone said that that's what they do when they get stuck. Go take a cold shower, go for a walk, go exercise. What you don't want to do is just keep trying to hammer away at the keyboard if you have writer's block. Then the next area, learn the nuts and bolts. So she talks about Leonardo da Vinci and how some people had doubters because he was focused on the wrong things when they looked at how he worked. But here she says, however, Leonardo understood that the better you know the nuts and bolts of your craft, the more fully you can express your talents. The great painters are incomparable draftsmen. They also know how to mix their own paint, grind it, put it in the fixative. No task is too small to be worthy of their attention. This reminds me of Ryan Holiday in Ego is the Enemy. I think it's called the canvas strategy. It's just this idea of when you're starting out and you want to be an expert, like top level at something. A lot of people want to skip that part, where skip the grunt work, things like that. But you learn so much doing that, and in a lot of cases, like if you do have a mentor, you're going to be doing like learning the nuts and bolts of the things, and it's in this way that you learn, or that you make yourself able to be creative. You can't really, you need to have a good handle on the tool set, and then you can be creative with it. Something I'm familiar with is like programming, and you can learn a lot of different things, but the fundamentals, if you learn like one language on the surface level and then you switch to another language, you're gonna have a hard time because the things don't match. But if you get a deep understanding of that language and how it abstracts out and those abstract concepts, then you can apply that to whatever language you're learning. It will make it easier to pick up other languages, and then you can create what you want to create. Next is, and finally, is this idea of finishing. What she says she does is she gives it a name, like if it's a dance, something like that. That's how she gets like that sense of finality, just a sense of, not quite like the accomplishment, but it's this idea in art or anything creative. You can keep polishing it and it won't be done. So it reminds me of, I think it's like Pixar, they say like, oh, we didn't finish the movie, but like, we released it. Same thing with, it reminded me of SNL and Lorne Michaels. He says like, we don't go on because we're ready, we go on because it's 11:30. So at a certain point, you need to finish things, give it a name. In this case, I'll name this something wonderful like book notes on the creative habit, and I'll have my sense that I'm finished. So thanks for checking this out. Go check that book out, The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. I really liked it. This is my second time reading it. I read it a few years ago, and yeah, all of the lessons, like I have different takeaways now because I'm trying to do different things, and I think it'd be a good book to revisit every few years and have different takeaways. Thanks for checking this out. Hit subscribe if you liked it.